It was the kind of case that no one could ever prepare for. The kind where the puzzle pieces don't fit, no matter how hard you try. On a crisp winter night, at exactly 1:43 a.m., Emma Rhodes, a 24-year-old graduate student from Boston, entered the elevator at the Marlowe Hotel, a historic building tucked away in downtown Los Angeles. Her face, caught on the dimly lit surveillance footage, showed signs of confusion, pressing buttons on the elevator repeatedly, pacing in and out of the small metal box, eyes darting from one corner of the room to another. But no one would have guessed that by 2 a.m. she would be missing without a trace. 2 weeks later, after the hotel received complaints about a strange taste to the water, a maintenance worker discovered something horrifying. Inside the hotel's rooftop water tank, locked tight, was Emma's body, fully clothed, submerged. But how did she get there? What had happened in those final moments leading up to her disappearance? This is where the mystery begins, one that would haunt the city and ultimately unravel secrets that no one could have predicted. Emma Rhodes was a bright young woman from Boston with big dreams and a quiet disposition. She'd recently graduated from Harvard University, where she'd studied psychology, and had decided to take a break from her hectic life by traveling to Los Angeles. Her family and friends knew she was independent, but they never worried about her. Emma was one of those people who always kept in touch, always gave a call, and never went too long without a text. She checked into the Marlowe Hotel on January 12, 2010, booking a 3-night stay as a solo traveler. A quick look at the hotel's exterior shows the familiar charm of a bygone era, with a faded neon sign glowing softly over the entrance. The Marlowe was known for its classic design, but it also had a murky reputation. It had been the site of several strange deaths in recent years, though nothing that had ever been fully explained. Emma didn't seem to mind the hotel's past. She was in town to attend a conference, meet with some old friends, and take in the sights. When she checked in at the front desk, she was all smiles, a typical excited traveler. But that night, something shifted. No one knew exactly what. Emma texted her mom around 9 p.m. to say she was having dinner and would be back to her room soon. Her phone records showed that she did indeed check into a cafe near the hotel, but that was the last known trace of her movements. After that, her phone went silent. Her family thought nothing of it at first, figuring she was just busy with work or a late-night meetup. However, as the days passed without any contact, alarm bells began to ring. By January 14, 2010, Emma was officially reported missing. What followed was an exhaustive search that would uncover more than anyone expected. About the hotel, about the people around her, and about a story that was far from over. The last time Emma Rhodes was seen alive, she was walking through the lobby of the Marlowe Hotel just before midnight, en route to the elevator. Her phone records showed a brief conversation with a colleague, but after that, everything went dark. The elevator footage, which was released later, would become the centerpiece of the investigation. At first glance, it seemed like the footage showed a woman acting a little anxious and a little confused. Emma entered the elevator, pressed several buttons in quick succession, and then stepped out before the doors closed. She re-entered moments later and repeated the same behavior. Something about her movements was unsettling. She was alone, but there was a sense that she was either looking for something, or someone, or trying to escape. Emma continued this odd behavior for several minutes before the footage stopped abruptly. The elevator doors closed. The camera angle shifted. But Emma was no longer visible. The footage had been enough to raise serious questions. What was happening to her? Why had she looked so scared? Had she been in danger? Despite the initial sense of confusion, there were no signs of foul play. The hotel staff reported no unusual behavior or disturbances in the building. But Emma was never seen again. A massive search ensued. The LAPD scoured the area, reviewed hours of security footage, and spoke to everyone they could: hotel staff, other guests, anyone who might have seen something unusual. However, the breakthrough didn't come until 2 weeks later, when maintenance workers made a shocking discovery. It was routine. The workers had been called to investigate complaints of poor water pressure. When they checked the rooftop water tanks, one of them noticed something unusual. The tank was unlocked, a rare occurrence, and inside was a body. They immediately contacted the police. The body was identified as Emma Rhodes. She had been missing for 2 weeks, yet no one had heard anything strange or seen any sign of foul play. How could she have gotten into the water tank? How had she managed to get inside, considering the lid was heavy and locked? The investigation into her death began with the basics: examining the hotel's security footage, interviewing staff, and checking her personal belongings for any clues. But there were no answers. The footage of her in the elevator was the last known interaction anyone had with Emma. Detective Rachel Hayes was assigned to the case. She had worked on many investigations throughout her career, but Emma's death struck her in a way she couldn't explain. It didn't make sense. There was something about the hotel, the secrecy, and the timeline that didn't add up. Everything pointed to an accident, except for one glaring detail. Emma had been found in a rooftop water tank, an area that wasn't accessible without a serious effort to climb up and get inside. Rachel began by speaking with the hotel staff. No one had seen Emma leave. The staff also reported nothing unusual about the night Emma disappeared. Everything seemed normal. The head of security, Frank Larson, was among those questioned. He confirmed that the elevator footage had been reviewed, but insisted that nothing out of the ordinary had been detected. "People are acting like she just vanished," Frank said, his tone defensive. "We've checked every inch of the hotel. There's nothing here but a tragedy." But Rachel wasn't convinced. Something was off. No one had seen Emma leave, yet her body was found miles away in a locked rooftop tank. It didn't add up. Rachel began to dig deeper into the hotel's past. Rumors, whispers of strange occurrences, unexplained deaths, and a history of guests who had checked in and never checked out. It wasn't until Rachel visited the hotel's basement and reviewed older guest records that she made a horrifying connection. There were several incidents spanning decades where guests had mysteriously disappeared. And in each case, there had been something unusual about the elevator. Some guests had reported strange sounds, others had described the elevator malfunctioning in inexplicable ways. The more Rachel learned, the more it seemed that Emma's case wasn't an isolated incident. There was a deeper mystery at play, one that stretched far beyond a simple hotel death. By the time the investigation had unraveled all the layers of the case, Rachel realized the truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. Emma's death wasn't just an accident. It was part of a disturbing pattern that spanned years, and no one was willing to discuss it. The Marlowe Hotel wasn't just a building. It was a place that had claimed more lives than anyone realized. As Rachel prepared to take her findings to the press, she received another anonymous message. "The elevator is watching you." Rachel couldn't ignore it any longer. She was too deeply immersed in this story, and the danger was closing in. The question was no longer who was behind Emma's death, but what had been lurking in the hotel for so long, and more importantly, what had it planned for her? Rachel returned to the Marlowe Hotel, determined to find the missing piece of the puzzle, but as she approached the elevator for the final time, she felt something she hadn't expected, an overwhelming sense of dread. The elevator doors of the Marlowe Hotel creaked open with an unsettling sound, the air thick with the scent of rust and age. Detective Rachel Hayes stood frozen for a moment, staring into the darkness of the elevator. She had seen the footage, heard the rumors, and felt the presence of something far darker in the hotel. But now, standing before the very elevator where Emma Rhodes had last been seen, the chilling realization struck her. Emma Rhodes had vanished into this very elevator. Her heart raced. She stepped forward, the metallic hum of the elevator's gears a distant whisper in her ears. She could almost feel it. Whatever force had driven Emma to act so erratically that night. But what Rachel didn't know was that she was about to uncover something much more terrifying. The elevator was not just a tool of transportation. It was the gate to something hidden beneath the hotel, something long forgotten. As the elevator doors closed behind her with a soft ding, Rachel took a deep breath. She was about to face a truth that would send shockwaves through the investigation. Rachel had been investigating Emma Rhodes's death for nearly a week now, and every lead had led her back to the Marlowe Hotel. The building was a labyrinth of dark corners, forgotten rooms, and half-hearted renovations. On the surface, it looked like any other rundown hotel in downtown Los Angeles, but Rachel could feel the weight of its hidden history pressing down on her. The Marlowe wasn't just a hotel, it was a repository for tragedies. But what was it about the hotel that had drawn people to it, only for them to disappear without a trace? Rachel sat at her desk, poring over case files, when she stumbled upon an old news clipping about the Marlowe. The headline was jarring. "The Vanishing Guests of the Marlowe Hotel, a Pattern of Disappearances." The article, dated 1993, described a series of mysterious disappearances that had occurred at the hotel over the previous decades. The strange thing was, none of these cases had ever been solved. Guests had checked in, but never checked out, and the cases were always written off as either suicides or accidents. One name stood out from the article: Laura Peterson. She had disappeared in 2012, just 2 years after Emma. Laura, like Emma, was a young woman traveling alone. The authorities had never found any evidence to suggest foul play. But Rachel knew something was wrong. It wasn't just an odd coincidence. This hotel was the common thread. Rachel had to know more. She made a decision. She was going to speak with the former staff who had worked at the Marlowe during the years when the disappearances occurred. She needed someone who knew what had been going on behind the scenes. Her first stop was a retired hotel manager named Henry Clark, who had worked at the Marlowe for nearly 20 years before retiring in 2021. When Rachel visited Henry at his small, rundown house on the outskirts of the city, she was prepared for resistance. But what she wasn't prepared for was the fear in his eyes the moment she mentioned the Marlowe Hotel. "I've been waiting for someone like you to come asking about that place," Henry said, his voice trembling. "You don't know what you're getting into. I was there when it all started, when it all changed." Rachel sat down, listening intently as Henry took a long, shaky breath before speaking again. There was something off about that hotel. Something dark. People don't just disappear like that. There's something about the building, about the elevator, that draws people in, but they don't leave. Not in the way you think. It's like they're taken. Rachel leaned forward, her pulse quickening. "What do you mean, taken?" Henry's hands clenched around the mug in front of him, his knuckles white. "I don't know how to explain it, but there's something ancient about the hotel. A force, I guess you could say. It's like it has its own will, its own way of trapping people. I don't know who or what controls it, but it's there. I saw things that no one should see." Rachel's mind raced as she absorbed Henry's words. Was he speaking metaphorically? Or was he telling her that the hotel itself had a power over its guests? Henry's voice dropped to a whisper. "The elevator is the key. You see, it's not just a place to move between floors. It's the doorway to something else. Something older." Rachel's thoughts were a whirlpool of questions and theories as she left Henry's house. The elevator. It was always about the elevator. But what was it that made it so significant? Why did it seem to draw people in and then trap them? She returned to the Marlowe Hotel, determined to explore every inch of it. The staff was still tight-lipped, but Rachel had a hunch that they knew more than they were letting on. As she entered the lobby, the oppressive atmosphere of the hotel seemed to settle around her like a blanket. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light only served to intensify her unease. Rachel headed straight for the elevator. The doors were already open, and as she stepped inside, she felt a strange, inexplicable sensation. A coldness, a heaviness, as though the air was thicker inside the elevator than it should be. The old metal buttons seemed to whisper when she touched them. She pressed the button for the rooftop, where Emma Rhodes had last been seen, and waited. The elevator creaked to life, its old gears groaning as it began to ascend. But as Rachel reached the top floor, the elevator came to a sudden halt. The lights flickered, then went out completely. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest as she reached for her phone. She flicked on the flashlight, but it only illuminated the small, confined space around her. She pressed the button again to go back down, but nothing happened. The elevator remained stationary. What is happening? Suddenly, a faint sound broke through the darkness. An eerie, almost imperceptible hum. It was coming from the walls of the elevator. The sound seemed to grow louder, vibrating through her bones. She could feel the temperature drop, the air turning frigid. And then, just as suddenly, the elevator began to move again. But it wasn't going down. It was going up. Rachel's heart skipped a beat as she realized something was terribly wrong. The elevator wasn't functioning properly. The doors opened with a soft ding, revealing a hallway she hadn't seen before. A narrow, dimly lit corridor with doors on either side, each one marked with an old, faded number. She stepped out, her breath coming in quick gasps, and immediately noticed that the temperature had dropped even further. The hallway was unnervingly quiet, almost too quiet. As Rachel walked down the corridor, she saw a door at the far end. It was cracked open just slightly, but enough for her to see a faint light spilling out from within. She approached it slowly, cautiously. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, she found something that would change everything. The room was unlike any she had seen in the hotel. It was a small, windowless space, filled with old furniture and forgotten artifacts. But what caught her attention was the strange symbols carved into the walls. They were ancient-looking, yet unmistakable patterns that appeared to have been drawn with intent. There was a sense of malevolence in the air, as though the very room was alive, watching her. Rachel stepped inside, her flashlight beam falling across the dusty wooden floor. In the corner of the room, there was an old journal, its pages yellowed and torn. The book was open, and the last entry read, "The hotel calls its guests, and when they answer, they never leave. The elevator is their guide. The curse is eternal." Rachel felt a shiver run down her spine as she read the words. The curse is eternal. Those words echoed in her mind. She turned and quickly left the room, her thoughts spinning. Had she uncovered the truth? Was this what Henry had meant by the hotel's dark power? As she headed back toward the elevator, the door slammed shut behind her and the lights flickered again. Rachel returned to her car, her mind racing. She had found the journal. She had found the evidence, but now she wasn't sure what to do with it. The hotel had its grip on her. She could feel it in her bones. The elevator was a doorway, a path to something that had claimed so many before her. The phone rang again, interrupting her train of thought. She looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. Rachel picked up the phone, her voice steady. "Hello?" But there was no answer, only heavy breathing on the other end. Then a whisper. You're too late. Suddenly, Rachel's car doors locked themselves, the sound of the locks echoing through the vehicle. She looked around, but no one was there. Her breath quickened as she realized someone, or something, was watching her. And this wasn't over yet. Rachel Hayes's heart was pounding as she sat in her car, the phone still pressed against her ear. The voice on the other end of the line was cold, chilling even. "You're too late." The line went dead, leaving only the eerie hum of static. Rachel's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. She glanced around, but the streets were empty. The city around her buzzed with the usual sounds of nightlife, but in the quiet of her car she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. The car doors suddenly locked with a heavy click. The sound sent a shock through her body. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't alone. As she frantically looked around the interior of her car, she saw a shadow pass by the rearview mirror. It was quick but unmistakable. Someone, or something, was outside, watching her. And just like that, Rachel realized, she wasn't just investigating a case anymore. She was part of something far larger, far darker. Something had been pulling the strings from the start, and if she wasn't careful, it might just claim her next. The Marlowe Hotel. The name itself now seemed cursed. What had started as a routine investigation into the death of Emma Rhodes had quickly spiraled into something Rachel could barely comprehend. She had uncovered files and documents, witnessed disturbing behavior, and found herself trapped in a web of secrets that extended far beyond a single disappearance. Rachel had spoken with Henry Clark, the former manager, and discovered clues that suggested something ancient and powerful was linked to the hotel's long history. She had even seen the hidden room, the cryptic symbols etched into the walls, and the mysterious journal that warned of an eternal curse. But what did it all mean? And why had Emma Rhodes, like others before her, been drawn into this dark vortex? Rachel's mind raced as she tried to piece the puzzle together. There had to be a connection between the disappearances, the elevator, and the strange occurrences in the hotel's history. But what was it? Why were people vanishing? Was there a force at play here that could not be explained? After her conversation with Henry, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone was orchestrating everything from the shadows. But who could it be? And why her? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on her car window. Startled, she turned to find a man standing outside, his face obscured by a hat and the shadows of the night. Rachel stepped out of her car, trying to appear calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The man remained silent, his eyes hidden under the brim of his hat. There was something unsettling about his presence, but Rachel couldn't place it. He held up a piece of paper, a photograph. It was the same photograph that Rachel had seen, the one of Emma Rhodes standing in front of the Marlowe Hotel. Elevator. But this time the figure beside her was different. It was a shadow, a figure that had never been caught on camera. Rachel's breath hitched. She had seen this shadow before. "You've seen it, too," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "The elevator. It chooses its victims just like it chose her. And now, it's chosen you." Rachel's mind raced. What did this man know? What was he trying to tell her? And how was he connected to everything? She needed answers. "I don't understand. What do you mean by the elevator chooses?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with urgency. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his face finally visible in the dim light. His expression was grim. "You're asking the wrong questions," he said, his eyes filled with a strange mixture of pity and dread. "You've already seen too much. The hotel's grip is tightening. You're not going to leave until it's ready for you, and it will never let you go. Rachel's mind was spinning as she processed the man's cryptic words. The hotel, the elevator, the shadow in the photograph. What was he saying? Was he talking about the curse Henry had mentioned? Was the hotel really responsible for all of this? Her instincts screamed at her to get out of there, to leave the hotel behind. But deep down, she knew she couldn't walk away. There were too many unanswered questions. Too many pieces of the puzzle remained to be uncovered. The man handed Rachel the photograph and turned to walk away without another word. As he disappeared into the night, Rachel stood there, clutching the photograph in her hand, her mind racing with fear and determination. She couldn't let it go. She wouldn't let it go. Rachel's next step was to confront Jonathan Blackwell again. He was the key to unlocking the mystery. But she knew Blackwell wouldn't make it easy. He had to be hiding something so powerful that he was willing to go to any lengths to protect it. Rachel returned to the Marlowe Hotel once more. The atmosphere felt different this time. Darker, heavier. She entered the lobby, but this time she wasn't just a detective investigating a murder. She was a target. The hotel seemed to hum with anticipation, as if it knew she was coming. Rachel walked straight to the front desk. The receptionist, a young woman with wide eyes, looked at her nervously but didn't say a word. "Is Mr. Blackwell available?" Rachel asked, her voice firm. The receptionist hesitated but nodded. "He's expecting you. You can go up." Rachel took the elevator, but this time the sensation was different. She felt it, the weight of history pressing down on her. The elevator was no longer just a means of transport. It was a conduit, a passage to something deeper. The doors opened, and Rachel stepped out into the dimly lit hallway, the eerie hum of the elevator lingering in her ears. Blackwell's office door was ajar. She pushed it open without knocking. Blackwell sat behind his desk, his face as unreadable as ever. "You've been digging into things you don't understand," Blackwell said without looking up. Rachel didn't sit. She stood tall, her voice unwavering. "I understand more than you think. I know what's been happening here, and I'm not leaving until I have answers." Blackwell finally looked up, his eyes dark and cold. "You've been warned. There's nothing for you here. You'll regret this." Rachel stepped forward, her eyes locking with his. "Why is the elevator so important, Blackwell? What is it about this hotel that makes it so dangerous?" Blackwell's lips curled into a thin smile. "You've seen the elevator, haven't you? It doesn't let go. It takes what it wants. You should have left while you still had the chance." Rachel's blood ran cold. The elevator. It wasn't just a metaphor. It was real, and it was the key to everything. Rachel knew she was running out of time. Blackwell wasn't going to give her the answers she needed, and the hotel's grip was tightening. The more she learned, the more she realized that the hotel had been a trap all along. She turned to leave, but as she reached the door, a voice called out behind her. "You won't leave," Blackwell said, his voice colder than ever. "Not until the elevator takes you." Rachel turned, her mind racing. "What are you talking about? What's going to happen to me?" Blackwell didn't answer. Instead, he simply looked at her with an expression of pity. Then, without another word, he turned his back on her and walked toward the window, staring out at the city below. Rachel Hayes's heart raced as the elevator doors closed behind her with an eerie ding. The sound echoed in the silence, sending a shiver down her spine. She felt the cold air around her thickening, the weight of it pressing against her chest. The lights flickered again, but this time it wasn't just a technical glitch. It felt like the elevator was alive. The walls seemed to pulse, the very metal of the elevator trembling as though it was preparing to take her somewhere far worse than she ever imagined. She pressed the button for the ground floor again, but nothing happened. The elevator kept moving up, higher and higher. Rachel could feel her pulse quicken as her mind raced with fear and confusion. Where was it taking her? Why was it so important for her to go up? And why did she feel as though she were being drawn into something she could never escape? The elevator stopped with a final, jarring thunk. The doors opened, revealing a hallway she had never seen before. It was a narrow corridor, dimly lit by flickering lights, the walls lined with dusty, faded doors. The air was thick with an unnatural cold, and the silence was so absolute that Rachel could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. "The elevator takes what it wants," she recalled Blackwell's ominous words. Was this the moment he'd been warning her about? The point of no return? Rachel stepped forward, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, but something held her in place. She had come too far to stop now. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. She had to know the truth. Rachel took cautious steps down the corridor, each footfall echoing louder than the last. The strange sense of urgency pushed her forward, pulling her deeper into the unknown. She turned a corner and found herself facing a heavy door, adorned with strange symbols etched into the wood. Her hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. It turned easily, almost as though it had been waiting for her. The moment she stepped inside, her flashlight illuminated the room, and what she saw froze her in place. The room was a vast open space with high ceilings that seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls were covered with photographs, photos of previous guests who had vanished without a trace. Sarah Walker, Laura Peterson, Emma Rhodes, all of them. The photos were arranged in a pattern, but one stood out. In the center of the wall, surrounded by the other faces, was a single photo of Rachel herself, taken just moments ago in the hotel's lobby. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The elevator, the hotel, Blackwell, everything was connected. This wasn't just a random series of disappearances. It was something planned, something orchestrated by forces Rachel couldn't even begin to comprehend. This hotel, this cursed place, had been trapping souls for decades, feeding on them, making them part of its twisted legacy. Rachel's breath came in ragged gasps as she understood the full weight of it all. She wasn't just investigating a crime, she was part of the hotel's unbroken chain of disappearances. Before she could react, the elevator doors closed behind her with a soft ding. The last thing Rachel remembered was the flicker of the elevator lights, the creeping cold in the air, and the sound of the elevator moving. Moving, but not down. Always up. Her body was never found. Her name joined the long list of those who had vanished into the Marlowe Hotel's sinister depths, their stories erased by the curse that seemed to haunt every corner of the building. The case was officially closed. The police filed the report as unsolved, but the truth was much darker. No one had uncovered the full story of the Marlowe Hotel, nor the dark force that lay at its heart. The building remained standing, an empty shell for those who would come after Rachel, those who would unknowingly check in, only to disappear like so many before her. As the story of Rachel Hayes fades into the shadows of the Marlowe Hotel, we're left to wonder, what drives us to places we can't fully explain? Why do some disappear without a trace, while others leave behind only whispers and shadows? The Marlowe Hotel isn't just a building. It's a symbol of the dark side of human curiosity. The hunger for answers, the drive to uncover what lies beneath the surface, can sometimes lead us down paths we're not prepared to walk. It reminds us that some places are best left untouched, their mysteries unsolved, because once you uncover the truth, you might never leave it behind. What happens when we push too far in search of the truth? Are we prepared for what we might find? Rachel Hayes couldn't answer that question. But perhaps, in the deepest corners of the Marlowe Hotel, The answers are waiting for someone else to uncover. If you've made it this far, you've uncovered the chilling secrets of the Marlowe Hotel, secrets that no one could have predicted. But this isn't the end. There are countless stories, mysteries, and unsolved cases still out there, waiting to be discovered. What do you think happened to Rachel Hayes? And what other hidden truths might be lurking in forgotten places around the world? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more chilling crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss our next chilling mystery. The truth is out there, and we're just getting started.